She turned a near-bankrupt vineyard into a $50 million wine empire. One would think such a grueling journey would be rewarded with recognition and unwavering trust. But at the height of her success, her father, also her business partner, coldly announced, "Your sister will no longer be the CEO. Your younger sister will take her place." A shock, a betrayal, but also the beginning of one of the most epic comebacks in the history of the wine industry. This isn't just a story about revenge, it's proof that real success doesn't ask for permission. 6 years ago, Mitchell Vineyards was nothing more than a withering farm, scattered with aging, leafless apple trees rooted in depleted soil. The family was drowning in bank debt, harvests had failed year after year, and her father, the farm's owner, was ready to give up, planning to sell the land to a housing development project. To most people, it was the sensible choice. Cut the losses and sell the lifeless remains. Even her younger sister, Jessica, once exclaimed, "Just sell it, Dad. This place isn't worth holding on to." Only one person refused to walk away: Sarah Mitchell. At 26, while her friends were chasing careers in the city or enjoying lives of modern comfort, Sarah moved back into the old wooden house at the heart of the farm. That marked the beginning of her mission to breathe life back into the land her entire family had given up on. She didn't return with naive optimism. She came back with a clear, strategic plan, forged from years of studying agricultural science, the wine market, and most crucially, viticulture, the science of growing grapes for wine. When Sarah proposed replacing the entire apple orchard with vineyards to produce wine, the whole region laughed. Grapes? Out here, winters are too harsh, soil's too poor. No one's ever pulled that off. But Sarah didn't care about the mockery. She studied the soil, brought in experts to assess the area's microclimate, selected grape varieties tailored to the elevation and soil pH, and even calculated prevailing wind directions to optimize vine rows. When the bank refused to lend her money, she put up her own private home as collateral to finance the transformation. From dawn to midnight, she was everywhere, on the fields, in soil analysis labs, at fermentation sites, and on calls with experts from Napa and France. When a devastating vineyard disease hit in the second year, enough to make anyone quit, she spent countless sleepless nights developing an organic pest control system that was later patented and widely adopted across the industry. Sarah wasn't the kind of leader who sat in air-conditioned offices. She worked side by side with her crew, lifting crates of grapes under the blazing sun. Her workers loved her for her fairness and her commitment to leaving no one behind. When winter came, instead of laying people off like others did, she used her personal savings to keep them employed and train them in advanced farming techniques for the next season. Those small acts built not just loyalty, but belief. 3 years in, Sarah released her first vintage, a Cabernet Sauvignon with the bold, refined character of a cold climate terroir. Instantly, critics from prestigious wine magazines took notice. A rising star is emerging in the Pacific Northwest. Local restaurants began ordering, followed by wine distributors from California and New York. Mitchell Vineyards became a phenomenon in the wine world, known for its precision viticulture that reduced water use by 40% while improving grape quality and sustainable yield. Sarah hadn't just built a brand, she pioneered a model of high-tech, eco-friendly agriculture that paved the way for a new era in American winemaking. From a land no one believed in, Sarah created a $50 million enterprise, complete with stable cash flow, solid partnerships, weekly tourist visits, and speaking invitations at major agri-tech conferences. To most people, that would be enough to call her a hero, but not in the Mitchell family. In the same office where Sarah had spent countless nights buried in financial statements, her father simply raised a glass of the wine she had crafted with her own hands and said, "Your sister's a bit too technical. We need someone more refined. Jessica will take over." In that moment, everything Sarah had built was dismissed by the one person she had trusted the most. But it was also the moment she truly rose. Not for family legacy, not out of loyalty, but with the unshakable strength of a woman who knows exactly what she's worth. Sarah stood there, in the room she had once considered the heart of Mitchell Vineyards, the very place where she had held critical meetings, mapped out improvements to the production process, and stood beside her father through those early days when there was barely enough cash to keep things afloat. But today, the air in that room felt heavier than ever, not because of the announcement of a new CEO, but because of the truth. Everything she had built had been dismissed with a single sentence. "Your sister's a bit too technical, lacks finesse, "We need a fresher image. Jessica will take over." Sarah said nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't get angry. She simply looked straight at the man who once taught her to love the fields, to value every drop of sweat that soaked into the soil. The man who, 6 years ago, had all but given up, while she stayed behind and fought with everything she had. And yet now, he had chosen to hand everything over to Jessica, the younger sister who had never worked a single day under the blistering vineyard sun, never smelled the mold creeping in when winters stretched longer than expected, and who most likely couldn't tell the difference between a Cabernet Sauvignon and a bargain bottle from the supermarket. The cruelty wasn't in the decision, it was in the justification. Jessica wasn't evil. She was simply the image her father wanted to believe in. A youthful, pretty woman with a sweet voice and a freshly earned online MBA after her green living blog flopped. A few carefully posed photos on Instagram holding a wine glass, and suddenly Jessica was the face of luxury market appeal. And her father, the same man who used to frown whenever Sarah spoke about irrigation ratios and soil acidity, was now enamored with words like rebranding and emotional experience that Jessica enthusiastically introduced. The betrayal wasn't administrative, it was philosophical. Jessica has taste. She brings an elegant touch. Her boyfriend's family knows a lot of people in the premium wine business. Each word felt like a dagger driven into Sarah's belief system. 10 years of hands-on experience, dozens of production innovations, a degree in agricultural science. None of it seemed to matter compared to a few online courses and some influencer connections. Sarah remembered the freezing winter nights when she trudged through rain to check the soil heating systems, the times she cut her own expenses just to make sure workers got paid on time, the day she signed the papers to mortgage her home just to buy experimental grape stock. She never kept score because she believed that family was the one place where value didn't need to be proven. She was wrong. And now, looking back, Sarah realized the biggest trap wasn't failure. It was blind faith and loyalty within a system that didn't recognize effort. In a calm voice, she asked her father, "What about the investors? Do they know yet?" Her father hesitated, just slightly, then said, "We haven't told them, but they'll understand. Jessica has a modern vision." Sarah gave a slight nod. She already knew the answer. And in truth, she'd been preparing for this moment for months, ever since Jessica started showing up at meetings, pretending to be interested in production processes, bringing her boyfriend along to learn about the family business. From that moment on, Sarah began protecting her work, legally. Every process, every innovation, every irrigation control algorithm was registered under her name. She hired attorneys, documented the development of each idea, and left no room for shortcuts. But Sarah wasn't just defending, she was also building a path forward. When Marcus, the CEO of one of the largest wine distributors in the US, invited her to consult on upcoming projects in California, she hadn't declined like she normally would. Instead, she said, "Let's stay in touch. I may need you someday." That day had come. So when her father said, "You'll stay on, of course, as head of production under Jessica. You can show your sister the ropes," Sarah didn't smile, but in her mind, the plan was already fully formed. "I'll help," she said, "but on my terms." Her father wanted her to step back, to become the shadow behind Jessica. Jessica, the younger sister who had never touched a single crate of grapes, who had no concept of the delicate balance between acid and tannins, and couldn't tell the difference between natural fermentation and industrial processing. He was the same man who once taught her, "The soil never betrays the one who tends it." But he forgot one thing. People can betray you, even those who share your blood. From that day on, Sarah began to play the role of the dutiful daughter, agreeing to support the transition, to stay behind the scenes, to protect the family image. But inside her, a machine had come alive, precise, cold, and calculated, just like the systems she had once designed to optimize irrigation based on soil moisture levels. She began clearing her office, organizing documents, and streamlining the workflow. But every file, every copy was handpicked. The most critical systems, the two-stage fermentation protocol, the real-time biomonitoring software, the AI-driven harvest forecasting model, were all quietly removed from Mitchell Vineyards. Not out of pettiness, but because they weren't shared property. They were her original creations, registered and protected under intellectual property laws. She hired a legal team to comb through every detail, ensuring there would be no ownership loopholes. She also started reaching out quietly to partners, suppliers, distributors, even restaurants. Those who had trusted and worked with her were subtly informed that upcoming changes in company leadership might affect service quality, and that if they were concerned, a new alternative would be available very soon. Then came the day of the fateful board meeting. Jessica entered the room as if she had just stepped off a fashion shoot, blush pink silk dress, rose gold laptop, and a mood board filled with wine bottles, crystal glasses, and twirling girls in pastel dresses among the vines. Sarah, by contrast, wore a simple white shirt, a charcoal blazer, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her confidence didn't scream. It radiated. Their father began the meeting with a carefully prepared speech talking about a new vision, about next-gen leadership, about luxury markets, and the power of social media. He emphasized Jessica's modern thinking, her network, and her refined aesthetic sense. Then Jessica launched into her PowerPoint presentation, her rebranding strategy, pink wine labels, a TikTok wine experience center. The silence in the room thickened, awkward and heavy. Margaret Chen, the company's largest investor, who had put her money into Mitchell Vineyards because she believed in Sarah, narrowed her eyes, glancing at Sarah, who remained quietly seated across the table. And then Sarah stood up. She spoke calmly. No raised voice, no theatrics, just facts. Thick folders were distributed to each board member. Lists of patents, proprietary technologies, specialized workflows, all registered under Sarah Mitchell. Each page landed like a hammer on the polished hardwood table. Every single system Mitchell Vineyards currently relies on, from precision farming, fermentation processes, to biological pest control, belongs to me. The company used them while I was CEO under my direct oversight. But now that I no longer hold that role, you'll need a new licensing agreement if you wish to continue using them. No one spoke. Jessica had gone pale. Their father stammered, This can't be. Those systems belong to the company." Sarah replied softly but coldly, "Wrong. They're mine. And the company can continue using them at current market licensing rates. Not expensive, just a few $100,000 a year." Margaret Chen nodded, glancing at the other investors. They whispered among themselves, their expressions turning serious. Then Margaret broke the silence. "I propose we suspend all leadership restructuring until we've fully reassessed the company's strategic direction. We can't risk millions on ideas that lack foundation." A reverse coup had just taken place. But Sarah wasn't finished. She calmly announced her new position as CEO of Sonoma Valley Ventures, a heavily funded project using her entire suite of innovations to build a sustainable wine brand. First-year revenue projections, $30 million. Then came the coldest move of all. As she reached the door, Sarah turned back to Jessica and said, "Oh, Jessica, the North Vineyard is showing signs of copper deficiency. Better take care of it before the fungus sets in. But I'm sure you already knew that, right?" Jessica's confused eyes were the perfect answer to the real question. Can a brand survive when it's handed to someone who doesn't understand its roots? 3 days after the fateful meeting, Sarah left Mitchell Vineyards at dawn. Golden sunlight bathed the rows of grapevines she had once planted, branch by branch, root by root, with sweat and devotion. But this time, she didn't hang her head. She walked away as a founder, not a failure. Because elsewhere, a new journey was waiting. At Sonoma Valley Ventures, Sarah got to work on day one. No more asking for permission. No more being told to dumb it down because it was too technical. For the first time in years, she could be 100% herself. A woman who knew the soil layer by layer, who understood microbial cycles, who could map every biochemical reaction in the fermentation process. The ideas once dismissed as not aligned with market trends were now welcomed with enthusiasm and respect. She initiated the development of an integrated agri-tech center, where sensors, satellites, and AI worked in harmony to predict harvests, optimize water usage, and control pests without chemicals. The entire model was dubbed Viticulture 2.0, a symbol of a new future in winemaking. Meanwhile, at Mitchell Vineyards, everything began to fall apart. Without Sarah, the smart farming systems became useless. Jessica couldn't answer the technical questions from the production team. Contracts that Sarah had personally negotiated and upheld with her own reputation were gradually terminated. Loyal customers withdrew. Distribution slowed, costs skyrocketed as they reverted to manual operations. The final blow came when Sarah, as the legal owner of the original patents, formally invoiced her former company for licensing fees. Hundreds of thousands of dollars per quarter if they wanted to keep using her systems. Jessica was stunned, her father furious. But the law was the law. They had signed the papers removing Sarah as CEO, which also meant giving up the right to use her innovations for free. Once a leading name in the wine industry, Mitchell Vineyards began to decline. They tried to refresh the brand by repainting the factory in pastel pink, launching wine and selfie events, even inviting influencers to shoot videos. But the wine was still bad. Without the science, no amount of aesthetic could save what was inside the bottle. In contrast, Sarah was making waves across the wine industry. Just 6 months in, Terra Nova Wines, the new label she co-founded in Sonoma, sparked a movement with its premium quality, transparent and sustainable process, and a clear message: we choose purity over Polish. Wine and Innovation magazine called her the future of American viticulture. Top-tier distributors from New York, Tokyo, and Paris reached out to pre-order products that hadn't even launched yet. An investor who once rejected Mitchell Vineyards even wrote, "We should have bet on the person, not the logo." Sarah didn't forget those who had stood by her in the beginning. She rehired many of her former colleagues, people who had been laid off when Jessica took over, and brought them into Terra Nova with better pay and real respect. She built a work culture that was transparent, professional, and deeply human, where everyone understood that real value comes from intelligence and effort, not appearances. And then, one day, just as she had predicted, the message came. "Sarah, it's Dad. We haven't been able to pay the royalties. The Northern Vineyard has a fungus issue. Things aren't running like they used to. Could you maybe help out a bit?" Sarah read the text, then locked her screen. No anger, no pity. Just a quiet note in the grand symphony of success she was composing. Next came a message from Jessica. "This isn't fair. Dad's talking about selling part of the vineyard. I don't know what to do." Then from Blake, Jessica's fiancé. "If you offer private consulting, we're willing to pay top dollar. No need to tell Jessica." Sarah deleted all 3 messages. Everyone had their chance. They chose shortcuts. Now they lived with the consequences. High on the hills of Sonoma, where the wind blew wild and the sun gilded each row of vines, Sarah sat with her young team of engineers, monitoring sensor data from the new farming system. Every metric showed it. The new grape variety she had developed was outperforming every expectation. At an awards ceremony, a reporter asked her, "Do you regret leaving Mitchell Vineyards?" She smiled. "I didn't leave. I let go, so I could reach for something else." And that wasn't a loss. It was an upgrade. 1 year after leaving Mitchell Vineyards, Sarah Mitchell stood on stage at the International Wine Innovation Summit in France, a gathering of the biggest names in the global wine industry. In her hand was a crystal trophy engraved with the words, "Most Innovative Sustainable Winery, Terra Nova Wines." As applause rose like a wave, she took the microphone and spoke slowly. Innovation isn't just about technology. It's about respect for the land, for people, and for your own journey. I used to think that to be recognized, I had to fight endlessly. But now I understand. Sometimes silence is the loudest voice, when you let your work speak for itself. In the audience sat Margaret Chen, the investor whose support for Sarah had once been ignored. Beside her were representatives from major distribution chains in Japan, Italy, and Switzerland, all of whom had signed contracts with Terra Nova Wines just 8 months after its launch. Meanwhile, back at Mitchell Vineyards, chaos had taken over. Unable to pay royalties for Sarah's patented innovations, they were forced to revert to outdated farming methods, which led to crop failure, fungal outbreaks, and a 40% drop in yield. Every aesthetic enhancement Jessica introduced only pushed customers further away. The premium market wouldn't accept poor quality wine just because it came in a pretty bottle. In a tense board meeting, Jessica was officially voted out by the board. Her most recent proposal, turning the production facility into an Instagram wine experience zone featuring grape-based wellness therapy, had been the final straw. And then, the call Sarah had always known would come, finally came. "Sarah, it's your father. The board has decided to sell Mitchell Vineyards." Margaret said, "You should be the first to know." She said nothing. There was a time she thought this moment would hurt, but it didn't. What she felt now was clarity. "I'm sorry," her father said. "I didn't see what you were building. If you'd consider coming back," she cut him off. "I'll consider it. Send the financials to my office. We'll talk as business partners." 2 weeks later, in a negotiation as swift as it was cold, Sarah Mitchell officially acquired Mitchell Vineyards through Terra Nova Holdings, the company she had founded herself. She kept the original name, Mitchell Vineyards, but added a new line beneath the logo, a Terra Nova Heritage Project. Quietly but firmly, she redefined her family's legacy, this time under leadership that truly deserved it. From distant Los Angeles, Jessica sent an apology email, for the first time, without flair, without heart emojis or wine gifts. "I was wrong. I didn't understand what you built. I'm truly sorry." Sarah's reply was short. "Good. Just remember that when you start over." Her father, now older, drained of pride and energy, was allowed to stay on as an advisor. But there was a condition. "You'll start from the beginning. Learn the irrigation system. Study the crop cycles. If not, you don't sign anything." He nodded. No more resistance, no more ego, only real regret in his eyes, and a quiet, overdue pride. When Sarah stepped into the old office, the one where she'd once learned she was being pushed out, she stood still for a long time. The desk, the bookshelf, the window facing the northern vines. Everything was still there. But now, it belonged to someone worthy of sitting in that seat. Carlos, a longtime vineyard worker, brought her a wine bottle wrapped in burlap. "We found this in the old cellar. The last batch you fermented here. We kept it, waiting for the day you'd come back. On the label, in handwritten script, Mitchell Vineyard Reserve, Sarah's Selection." Sarah smiled. "There's no victory sweeter than the one you don't have to shout about." That evening, she hosted a quiet celebration with both old and new team members. Outdoors, between rows of vines coming back to life. No fireworks, no press, no spectacle, just golden sunset light, the heady scent of grapes, and heartfelt laughter. "We didn't come back for revenge," she said, raising her glass. "We came to replant what was once buried under prejudice and dismissal." 1 year later, Mitchell Vineyards, now Terra Nova's heritage branch, was awarded Best Restoration Project at the European Agricultural Summit. The new batch, named Rooted Rise, a tribute to rising from the roots, sold out within 2 weeks of release. Sarah, now a living legend in viticulture, could still be found in the fields every morning. She believed the vine doesn't care about awards. It only needs someone who understands it, respects it, and doesn't abandon it when times get hard. Mitchell Vineyards was once the dream of a family. Now it's the dream of a new generation, rewritten from the ground up by the hands of the woman once cast aside. And this time, no one is taking it from her again.